You need to watch this if you crave chills down your spine. Welcome to Soul Studios. Here, true crime meets the unknown. Suspense lurks in every shadow, and supernatural forces whisper from the dark. We craft chilling, edge-of-your-seat short stories inspired by the eerie, the unexplained, and the most haunting mysteries. 3 new stories drop every week, each one darker than the last. Are you ready to step inside? Subscribe now before the next story finds you.
Picture a tranquil suburban cul-de-sac where everybody knows each other and doors stay unlocked. Now imagine a routine late-night shift ending like any other until a muffled thump from next door shatters the silence. A seasoned paramedic, tired and on edge, brushes it off at first, but when dawn brings strange sights, bleary eyes staring from an upstairs window, heavy black bags hauled away before sunrise, and a distant, blood-curdling cry that cuts through the night, he realizes something is horribly wrong. Driven by instinct, he steps across the fence, following the trail of unsettling clues into darkness. What he uncovers behind that friendly facade is a secret that will haunt him forever. This is a story about trust betrayed, instincts ignored, and the hidden horrors that can dwell next door. Are you ready to listen? If you crave horror that feels unsettlingly real, subscribe now and ring the bell to join Soul Studios, where every whisper could be your last warning. I woke suddenly, jolted upright in bed by a sound that sliced through the darkness. My heart hammered painfully in my chest as I sat frozen, listening. The scream came again. Unmistakably from Mr. Holloway's house next door. I leaped from my bed, scrambling to the window. Outside, in the pale glow of a streetlight, I saw my neighbor, quiet, friendly Mr. Holloway, dragging something wrapped in a blood-stained sheet onto his porch. I felt my stomach twist as a small hand reached weakly from the bundle. Without thinking, I grabbed my phone, dialing 911. Realizing too late that the horror next door was about to pull me straight into its deadly grasp. I suppose it's best I start at the beginning, how I got here. Just a few weeks ago, I was living a normal life on Sycamore Lane, in a sleepy suburban town where nothing ever happens. I'm a 26-year-old paramedic, used to stressful nights, but I always found comfort in the quiet of my neighborhood. I grew up on this street. Everyone knows everyone. We leave our doors unlocked and borrow sugar from each other's kitchens. It's that kind of place. And for as long as I can remember, Mr. Leonard Holloway lived next door. A polite, soft-spoken man in his late 50s. He's the type who'd water your plants when you're on vacation and wave from his porch every morning. A retired accountant, widowed young, no children. The sort of neighbor you trust implicitly. The sort of neighbor you never ever suspect. In all my years, Mr. Holloway was nothing but kind. He taught me how to fix my bike chain when I was 12. He'd bring homemade oatmeal cookies to the block party every 4th of July. They were always everyone's favorite. He kept a tidy yard, rose bushes trimmed to perfection, and he never made much noise. In fact, some jokingly called him Silent Len, because he was so quiet. If you didn't see him, you might forget he was there at all. In a town this small, gossip eventually finds everyone, but no one had a bad word to say about Mr. Holloway. He was just part of the backdrop of our lives, steady and benign, or so we thought. It started with something subtle. 3 weeks ago, on one of my overnight shifts, I returned home around 3 a.m. The neighborhood was dark and silent, except for a faint light glowing in Mr. Holloway's upstairs window. I remember because it was odd. He usually went to bed early. As I cut across my driveway, I heard a dull thud from inside his house. I paused. The sound came again, like something heavy being dropped on a floor. I glanced at the lit window. A shadow moved briefly across it. I wondered if Mr. Holloway was awake or if perhaps he'd knocked over some furniture. Part of me wanted to check on him. He lived alone, after all, but the noise stopped. The light in the window blinked out. Ultimately, I shrugged it off as none of my business. I wish I hadn't. Over the next few days, I began to notice other strange things. Small, almost dismissible details. In the mornings, Mr. Holloway still waved hello, but I'd find him outside at odd hours, bleary-eyed, like he hadn't slept. More than once, I saw him unloading big black trash bags from the trunk of his old Buick early at dawn. Not the usual tidy bags of lawn clippings I'd expect. He kept a pristine yard year-round. These looked different, heavier. He caught me looking one time and gave a thin smile. "Cleaning out the attic, finally," he said in that gentle voice. "Getting rid of old junk." I nodded, not thinking much of it. But later that week, our town's Facebook page buzzed about a missing cat, a tabby from 2 streets over. Then another post about a missing small dog. Pets went missing sometimes to coyotes or the highway, but a nagging thought scratched at me. Could those trash bags have held? No, I brushed it aside. Mr. Holloway wouldn't hurt an animal. He doted on the neighborhood pets, even left out water bowls in summer. I told myself I was being paranoid. Then came the night of the trunk. A week and a half ago, I was mowing my lawn in the late afternoon when Mr. Holloway shuffled over with that pleasant grin of his. He rarely asked for help, so I was surprised when he invited me over. He said he'd finally gotten around to sorting the last of his late wife's belongings in the attic, and there was an old wooden trunk up there he couldn't manage alone. Of course, I agreed to lend a hand. I followed him into his house, the first time I'd been inside in years. The smell hit me immediately, a cloying, sweet odor undercut by bleach. It was faint, but noticeable. As a paramedic, I know the scent of cleaning chemicals well, and something about it set me on edge. "Sorry about the mess, been doing some spring cleaning," Mr. Holloway apologized. Oddly, the house looked almost overly neat. Not a thing out of place in the living room. Plastic covers on the furniture, shelves of porcelain figurines arranged just so. If he was cleaning, I wondered where the mess was. He led me up the narrow stairs to the attic hatch. The whole time, he kept up polite small talk, asking about my work, my parents who had retired to Florida years ago, reminiscing about when I was little. I answered, but my responses felt distant. My focus kept drifting. Something about the house felt off. There was a room at the end of the hall with a closed door, and as we passed it, I noticed 3 new deadbolt locks bolted to the outside of that door's frame. The metal locks gleamed, stark and out of place on the old wooden door. It was strange. Why would an interior door need a lock at all, let alone multiple heavy-duty ones? I was about to ask Mr. Holloway about it when he spoke up suddenly to distract me. "This trunk is just up here. Careful on the ladder." We climbed up into the attic, which was lit by a single dangling light bulb. Dust motes swirled in its weak yellow glow. There in the corner lay an antique cedar trunk, large and scuffed. We each took one end and dragged it towards the hatch. It was heavy, far heavier than a trunk full of old clothes had any right to be. I struggled not to grunt with effort. "What's in here, anvils?" I joked, trying to break my own tension. Mr. Holloway chuckled softly. "Books, mostly, and Margaret's knickknacks." His face was in shadow, but I swore I caught a flicker of something in his eyes, a sudden intensity. At one point, my sweaty hand slipped, and the trunk thudded onto the floor. Something inside clinked. I'll never forget that muffled metallic rattle. It sounded like chains. My eyes darted up to Mr. Holloway. For a split second, I thought I saw alarm on his face, but he quickly cleared his throat and gave a benign smile. "Old tools, I think. Might be some of my dad's things in there too." His tone was calm, but his fingers were white-knuckled on the trunk's edge. An uneasy chill crept into my gut. We hauled the trunk down the ladder and into the garage as he asked, and he thanked me profusely at the end. He pressed a cold root beer into my hand from his garage fridge, acting as if everything were perfectly normal. I wanted so badly to believe that it was. Yet as I left, I couldn't shake the feeling I'd just helped move something that wasn't meant to be seen. That night I barely slept, replaying the sights and smells of Mr. Holloway's house in my mind. Those locks on the door, the chemical odor, the heavy trunk with chains, or whatever that was, inside. Each tick of my bedroom clock seemed louder than the last as I lay in the dark, worrying that maybe something was very wrong next door. I told myself to find a rational explanation. Perhaps he was just sorting through painful memories of his wife's things. The locks. Maybe he was storing valuables or firearms. This is a safe area, but some folks are extra cautious. And the trunk. Old tools can be heavy and clank around, sure. My brain fought my gut, trying to smother the irrational sense of dread that was building. I decided I'd keep a polite distance for a few days, just observe. If I really thought something was off, I could talk to him or call someone. Little did I know, the decision would soon be out of my hands. Several nights later, the true horror began. It was just past midnight on a Tuesday when I was jolted awake. At first, I wasn't sure if it was a dream. I sat up, heart pounding, straining to listen in the darkness. For a long moment, I heard nothing. I was about to lie back down when it came again, louder, clearer. A scream, muffled but unmistakable, of someone in terrible fear or pain. And it was coming from Mr. Holloway's house. I scrambled out of bed and to my window. From there, I could see part of his backyard illuminated by the moon. The light in his upstairs room was on again. Another cry, cut abruptly short, made my blood run cold. It sounded like a woman's voice. What on earth? I fumbled for my phone and dialed 911 before I fully realized what I was doing. As a paramedic, I've called in emergencies countless times, but never from the viewpoint of a neighbor fearing the worst. I told the dispatcher I heard a possible domestic disturbance or someone in danger at my address next door. They said officers were on the way. While waiting, I couldn't just sit. I threw on a jacket and crept out my back door into the rain-damp night. Slipping through my side gate, I had a partial view of Mr. Holloway's back porch. The house was quiet now, almost eerily so. No lights on the first floor, just that faint glow from upstairs. I hesitated. 1,000 horrible scenarios in my mind. Was someone hurt? Was Mr. Holloway hurt? Or was he doing something to someone? My stomach churned at the latter thought. Suddenly I heard the back door of his house burst open. I ducked behind my fence, peering through a crack. Mr. Holloway emerged onto the porch, dragging what looked like a large bundle wrapped in a sheet. Even in the dim light, I saw dark, wet splotches seeping through the fabric. The bundle writhed. My breath caught. There was someone alive in there, struggling weakly. A muffled whimper came from inside the sheet, and one bare hand flopped out, scrabbling at the air. I recognized the slender wrist immediately, the thin silver bracelet. It was Claire Morell, a teenage girl from our street who I'd known since she was little. She'd babysat for one of our neighbors just that afternoon. What was she doing? How? My shock gave way to action. I stepped forward without thinking, calling out, "Mr. Holloway! Leonard, what are you doing?" My voice came out high, panicked. He snapped his head towards me, and for a split second, in the weak porch light, I caught a glimpse of his face. It was like nothing I'd ever seen in him, contorted with rage and panic, eyes wild and dark in a way that made my skin crawl. Not the kindly neighbor I knew. This was a stranger, a predator cornered mid-act. He dropped the bundle unceremoniously. Claire let out a muffled cry as she hit the wood planks. Mr. Holloway took a step toward me across the yard, one hand reaching behind his back. That's when I noticed the glint of metal. He had a knife tucked into his belt. My stomach lurched with primal fear. I wanted to run, to scream that the police were coming. I could already hear sirens in the far distance. But my voice caught in my throat. Mr. Holloway advanced, each footstep deliberate. "You shouldn't have seen this," he said softly, almost regretfully. Thunder rumbled overhead and rain began to pour, drenching us both. Claire moaned from the porch, trying to crawl free of the sheet. I knew I had to stall him, keep his focus on me. If I bolted, he might finish whatever he'd planned for her. Summoning courage, I stammered, "Leonard, please, you don't have to do this." His face spasmed, conflict flashing in his eyes. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw the kindly neighbor resurface, guilt and sorrow. But then a jagged snarl twisted his lips. "You have no idea what I have to do," he hissed. In 2 quick strides, he closed the gap and grabbed me by the collar. I gasped as he shoved me hard against my fence, the back of my head smacking wood. Stars exploded in my vision. The rain pelted us, and I could barely see his face inches from mine. "Always were a nosy kid," Mr. Holloway growled. voice almost lost under the rain's roar. Should have kept your eyes down. Before I could react, he dragged me toward his house with startling strength. I fought, adrenaline surging, but he was deceptively strong for a man his age, and my feet slipped on the wet grass. I yelled a raw scream for help, but thunder swallowed the sound. He yanked me up the porch steps, stepping over Claire's limp form. I tried to grab her hand, but he wrenched me away and shoved me through his back door, slamming it behind us. Inside the house, the smell of bleach and rot was overwhelming. I was disoriented, my head ringing from the blow. Mr. Holloway practically threw me to the kitchen floor. I scrambled backward on my hands, desperate to put distance between us. In a flash, he pulled the knife from his belt. Its blade was long, curved, and horribly stained. My eyes widened at the sight of dried brown crusting the metal. I choked on a sob. Why? Leonard, why? Was all I could manage. For a moment, he simply stood there, rainwater dripping from his greying hair onto the linoleum. He looked almost pitiful in that second, a trembling old man with secrets too heavy to bear. You wouldn't understand, he murmured, and there was a flicker of genuine anguish in his eyes. Nobody ever did. It's not me, son. I'm a good man. I had to quiet them, the voices, so many voices. He trailed off, then his gaze sharpened back to a predatory glare. No time now. I'm sorry. He lunged, swinging the knife. I rolled instinctively. The blade clanged off a cabinet where my head had been an instant before. I kicked out, my boot connecting with his knee. He grunted, stumbling, and I seized the moment to bolt to my feet and run. My only thought was to get away. Maybe unbolt the front door, anything. But I'd only made it to the living room when a heavy weight slammed into my back, tackling me to the ground. We crashed into a small table, sending a porcelain figurine shattering to the floor. Mr. Holloway was on top of me, surprisingly heavy, pinning me down. My chin hit the hardwood and I tasted blood. He pressed his forearm against the back of my neck, forcing my face to the floor. I felt the cold kiss of the blade against my scalp as he yanked my head back by my hair. Hot tears mingled with the rainwater on my face. I thought of my parents, of little Claire bleeding on the porch, of all the normal, peaceful days that led to this nightmare. This couldn't be real. This kind of thing doesn't happen in our town. Not to people like us. Red and blue lights strobed through the front windows, flashing across the walls. Police! Drop the weapon! A voice boomed from outside, faint through the thunder. Mr. Holloway's grip faltered for just a split second as he registered the new threat. That was all I needed. Summoning every ounce of strength, I twisted and threw my elbow back into his ribs as hard as I could. There was a sickening crack and he howled, loosening his hold. I rolled free, crawling desperately away. Mr. Holloway lurched to his feet, knife still in hand, and staggered toward the hallway that led to the back door, trying to escape. I forced myself up and stumbled after him, pure adrenaline fueling me. If he got away now, I knew he'd never stop. The silhouette of an officer appeared at the front door, kicking it open, shouting commands. Lightning lit the house in stark white. Mr. Holloway flung the back door open only to find two more officers there, guns drawn. Freeze! Drop it! They shouted. For one agonizing moment, Mr. Holloway stood in the doorway, rain lashing his face, knife raised. His eyes met mine across the kitchen, an unreadable look, something between despair and fury. Then he stepped back inside, oddly calm, and placed the blade against his own throat. My eyes widened. No! I screamed, but it was too late. With a brutal slash, he cut deep. Blood cascaded down his front as he collapsed to the floor, gasping. It was over in an instant. The police rushed forward, guns still trained, but there was no need. Leonard Holloway, my quiet neighbor, lay dying in the doorway of his own home by his own hand. The aftermath was a blur of flashing lights, EMTs, some of them colleagues I knew in disbelief, and endless questions. Claire was found alive, thank God, badly injured and traumatized, but alive. They whisked her to the hospital. I sat on the curb in the rain, a blanket around my shoulders, watching as officers swarmed Mr. Holloway's house with cameras and flashlights. I felt hollow, numb. My eyes drifted to the covered stretcher they wheeled out, Holloway's body, and I shook my head in mute disbelief. How could the man who taught me to tie fishing knots when I was 8 be the same monster who did this? The answer came in the following days, as investigators combed through Leonard's life and home. The evidence they found turned our stomachs and chilled our souls. Hidden behind that triple-locked door in his hallway was a secret room, a chamber of horrors. Inside, they found chains bolted to the floor, stained with blood, rusty metal tools laid out neatly on a table, a camera on a tripod, and a pile of personal effects, watches, rings, even tattered clothing, all trophies from his victims. But the worst discovery was tucked away in his attic and study, diaries. Dozens of them. Leonard Holloway had kept meticulous records of his work going back decades. Each diary was filled with dates, names, eerie sketches, and horrifying details of what he'd done. People who had vanished without a trace from our town and the towns around us, cold cases that had haunted families since the 1970s. One by one, their fates were laid bare in those pages. He'd been at it for over 40 years, right under everyone's noses, hiding behind that friendly smile. I was given a summary of the diaries by a detective, though I think he spared me the worst details. Leonard wrote about how his quiet nature let him hide in plain sight, how he would earn his victims' trust, or sometimes take advantage of those just passing through town. Page after page of unspeakable acts, each entry written in the same neat, steady handwriting I recognized from the Christmas cards he'd send me. One diary entry described luring a hitchhiker into his car on a stormy night in 1982. This was an unsolved case I'd heard about growing up. Another detailed how he sabotaged a young woman's car so it would break down near our neighborhood, then offered his home as a phone call stop. That woman was never seen again until now. The diaries spoke of silencing the voices and how each victim would finally join the quiet choir when he was done. He wrote as if he believed he was doing them a favor, or perhaps doing himself a favor, banishing some inner demons with blood. It was the rambling of a madman, but disturbingly lucid and organized. He knew exactly what he was doing. The revelation that shook me most was one of the final entries. Dated just 2 nights before the incident, Leonard wrote, "I've noticed the boy next door watching. He heard something. I see it in his eyes. I'll have to bring him into the quiet too, soon. He's such a good kid. It's a shame, but the voices are insistent now." Reading that sent an icy dagger of guilt and horror through me. If the police had arrived minutes later that night, I might have become just another name in his ledger, another unsolved case wrapped in plastic in his attic trunk. He had intended to make me his next victim. The man I trusted like family had been planning to kill me. They say over a dozen cold cases were closed thanks to Leonard's journals. Families finally learned the cruel fate of their loved ones. Our entire town fell into a state of collective shock and grief. We held candlelight vigils for the victims we never even realized were among us. And as I stood among my neighbors at one such vigil, faces lit by flickering flames, I realized something else. The horror might have ended with Leonard's death, but its shadow will loom over this place, over me forever. Sometimes I can't sleep, imagining I hear faint crying or whispers carried on the night breeze. I know it's just in my head, or I hope it is. The therapist I've been seeing says it's PTSD and survivor's guilt. Perhaps she's right, but part of me wonders if the echoes of what Leonard did linger, like ghosts wandering the hallways of that accursed house next door. The house has been cordoned off, of course, and no one will live there ever again if the town has any say. Still, when I pass it, I swear I sometimes see a curtain move in an upstairs window, as if someone, something, is still watching. It's been 3 months now. Claire is recovering, though the emotional scars will run deep. As for me, I sold my childhood home on Sycamore Lane. I couldn't stay living next to that emptiness, that mausoleum of secrets. I left town, trying to outrun the nightmares that replay those final moments over and over. I know I'm lucky to be alive. But every night I hear Leonard's soft voice in my dreams. You have no idea what I have to do, and I jolt awake, heart slamming in my chest. I don't think I'll ever fully escape it, the knowledge of how evil can hide behind the most ordinary smile. I haven't been back since, and if you ever find yourself living next door to someone so quiet and kind that you never suspect a thing, pay attention. Trust your instincts. Some doors are better left unopened, and some secrets are darker than you can imagine. Just pray you don't uncover them the way I did. I thought I knew my neighbour, but monsters don't always lurk in the dark. Sometimes they live right next door, smiling through the cracks. And if you ever hear something you can't explain, listen. It might be the only warning you get.
Every story has an end, but here, the mysteries never stop. Thank you for watching and being a part of this journey into the unknown. Your support keeps these stories alive, and there's plenty more waiting for you. We drop 3 new stories every week, so if you crave suspense, the unexplained, and the downright chilling, make sure you're subscribed and ready for what's next. Until then, keep your lights on, your doors locked, and remember, some stories stay with you long after they're told.